Welcome to the Sleepy Stoic. If reflections like this help you slow down, think clearly, or simply rest your mind at the end of the day, consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like on the video. It helps others find these quiet conversations as well. And if there's a challenge from daily life you'd like us to explore, something about work, relationships, anxiety, discipline, or simply trying to live well, let me know in the comments. Many of these reflections begin with questions from people just like you. Now let's begin. There is an ancient idea, quietly powerful, that runs through the heart of Stoic philosophy. It is not often the first teaching we encounter when we open Marcus Aurelius or read the letters of Seneca. It is not as immediately practical as the dichotomy of control, nor as striking as memento mori. Yet it underlies all of these teachings. It gives them context, weight, and coherence. The Greeks called it Sympatheia. We might translate it as cosmic sympathy or universal interconnection. But translation always loses something. Sympatheia suggests a living responsiveness, a feeling with a mutual participation in existence itself. It is the Stoic conviction that all things are bound together in a web of relation so intimate, so total, that nothing stands alone. This is not mysticism, though it may sound like it to modern ears. For the Stoics, Sympatheia was a reasoned conclusion drawn from observation, from logic, from the evidence of the natural world. They looked at the cosmos and saw not a collection of separate objects, but a unified whole, a single living organism expressing itself in countless forms. We are parts of this whole, not isolated individuals dropped into an indifferent universe, but members of a body, organs of a vast system, threads in a fabric without seams. What happens to one part affects all others. What we do reverberates, however faintly, through the entire structure of reality. This understanding shaped everything the Stoics taught about how to live. If we are truly connected to all things, then our ethics cannot be narrow or selfish. Our rationality must extend beyond personal advantage. Our sense of kinship must reach further than family, further than city, further than nation. Sympatheia is the metaphysical foundation of Stoic cosmopolitanism, of the idea that we are citizens of the world. It is the reason Marcus Aurelius could write that what benefits the hive benefits the bee. It is why Seneca insisted that no human being is foreign to us, that we share a common nature and a common reason. In our own time, this ancient teaching finds unexpected resonance. We speak now of ecosystems, of climate systems, of global networks of cause and effect. We understand, perhaps more clearly than ever, that actions in one place produce consequences in another. We see the web, even if we do not always know what to do with that seeing. The Stoics offer us a way to think about connection that is both practical and profound. They show us that interconnection is not merely a fact to acknowledge, but a truth to live by. They teach us that recognizing our place in the whole does not diminish us, but completes us. Over the next hours, we will explore this teaching carefully. We will trace its roots in Stoic metaphysics, its expression in the writings of the great Stoic teachers, and its implications for how we understand ourselves and our obligations. We will move slowly, allowing each idea time to settle and unfold. This is philosophy as the Stoics practiced it, not as abstract speculation, but as a guide to living. Sympatheia is not simply something to believe. It is something to perceive, to feel, to enact in the choices we make each day. To understand Sympatheia, we must first understand what the Stoics meant by cosmos. This word, which we have inherited, meant something more specific and more beautiful to them than it often does to us. cosmos did not simply mean the universe in the sense of everything that exists. It meant order, arrangement, beauty. It meant a system governed by reason. The cosmos, for the Stoics, was not chaos given structure. It was structure itself, logos expressing itself in material form. Everything within it participated in this rational order, from the movements of the stars to the growth of a tree, from the tides of the ocean to the thoughts that pass through a human mind. This logos, this ordering principle, was not separate from the material world. The Stoics rejected the Platonic division between a perfect realm of forms and an imperfect material realm. For them, there was only one world, and it was both physical and rational, both matter and meaning, woven together inseparably. Logos pervaded everything. It was the fire that Heraclitus spoke of, the ever-living flame that transforms all things while remaining itself. It was the pneuma, the breath or tension that held the cosmos together and gave it life. It was reason, not as an abstract human capacity, but as the animating principle of reality itself. When we reason well, the Stoics believed, we participate in this cosmic reason. Our minds are not separate from nature, but expressions of nature. The rationality that allows us to think about the world is the same rationality that orders the world. We are the cosmos becoming conscious of itself. This is a remarkable claim, and it is worth pausing to feel its weight. We often think of ourselves as observers of nature, separate from what we observe. We stand apart, we analyze, we categorize. But the Stoics saw no such separation. To be human is to be nature in one of its modes. To think is to participate in the thinking that the cosmos does through us. Sympatheia follows naturally from this understanding. If all things are expressions of a single rational principle, if the same logos that orders the stars also orders our thoughts, then all things are kin. Not metaphorically, but literally. We are related to everything because everything shares the same essential nature. The world is not a machine, not in the modern mechanical sense. A machine is made of separate parts assembled according to a design. If you remove a gear, the machine may fail, but the gear remains a gear. It has its own independent existence. But the cosmos is not like this. It is more like a living body, an organism. Every part exists in relation to the whole and derives its nature from that relation. The hand is a hand because of its place in the body and its function within the whole. Severed from the body, it is no longer truly a hand, merely the form of one. This analogy appears repeatedly in Stoic writings, and Marcus Aurelius returns to it again and again. We are limbs of a larger body. We are not self-sufficient, not independent, not autonomous in the absolute sense. Our existence is relational through and through. This is not a limitation. It is what we are. To resist it, to imagine ourselves as isolated individuals with no essential connection to anything beyond our own skin, is to misunderstand our nature. It is to cut ourselves off in thought, if not in fact, from the source of our being. The Stoics were not denying individuality. Each person has a unique character, unique experiences, a unique role to play, but this uniqueness exists within a context of belonging. We are distinct expressions of a common nature, variations on a shared theme. Understanding this changes how we see everything. A tree is not simply an object in our environment. It is a fellow participant in the cosmic order, another expression of logos, another form through which nature becomes manifest. The same is true of other people, of animals, of the earth itself. The early Stoics, particularly Zeno and Chrysippus, developed a sophisticated physics to support these metaphysical claims. They were not content with poetic assertions about universal connection. They wanted to explain in careful detail how such connection actually worked. Their explanation centered on pneuma, a term usually translated as breath or spirit, but perhaps better understood as vital tension or active force. Pneuma was their answer to the question of how the cosmos maintained its coherence, how disparate things influenced one another, how the whole held together. Pneuma, they taught, permeated all things. It existed in varying degrees of tension or intensity. In stones and earth, pneuma was present but at its lowest tension, manifesting as simple cohesion, the force that kept an object together as itself. In plants, pneuma was more active, producing growth and organic life. In animals, it was more active still, producing perception and movement. In humans, pneuma reached its highest tension, manifesting as reason. This was not a hierarchy of value in the modern sense, with humans at the top of a ladder. Rather, it was a spectrum of intensity within a single continuum. The same fundamental force expressed itself differently according to the nature of each thing. Everything participated in the same vital principle, but participated in different ways and to different degrees. Pneuma moved through the cosmos in a constant cycle. It flowed outward from the center and back again, like breathing, like the systole and diastole of a great heart. This movement created the tension that held things together and the responsiveness that allowed things to affect one another. When something happened in one part of the cosmos, the pneuma carried that effect throughout the whole. Not instantaneously, perhaps, and not always perceptibly, but truly. Every action sent ripples through the medium of pneuma, the way a stone dropped in a pond sends ripples across the water. This is sympatheia in its physical form. It is not magic. It is not supernatural. It is the natural consequence of a cosmos unified by a single pervasive principle. Because everything is connected through pneuma, everything responds to everything else. The connection is built into the structure of reality. The Stoics offered many examples to illustrate this. They pointed to the tides, which respond to the moon though separated by vast distance. They noted how animals could sense approaching storms, how plants turned toward the sun, how the body responded to the mind and the mind to the body. These were not separate phenomena requiring separate explanations. They were all expressions of sympatheia, of the cosmos feeling itself. Some of their examples seem quaint to us now. They believed that divination worked through sympatheia, that a skilled interpreter could read signs in the flight of birds or the patterns of entrails because these things genuinely reflected cosmic conditions. We may not share this belief, but the principle behind it is coherent within their system. If all things are connected, then the state of the whole is reflected, however obscurely, in the state of each part. What matters for us is not whether every Stoic claim about sympatheia was correct, but the deeper insight they were articulating. They saw the cosmos as fundamentally relational. Nothing exists in isolation. Everything that happens is part of a larger pattern, a larger unfolding, a larger story. Modern physics has revealed a universe far stranger and more interconnected than the Stoics could have imagined. Quantum entanglement suggests that particles separated by vast distances can remain correlated in ways that seem to transcend space and time. Ecology shows us that ecosystems are networks of dependence and mutual influence, where the loss of one species can cascade through the entire system. Climate science demonstrates that the atmosphere and oceans form a single dynamically coupled system, where perturbations anywhere eventually affect conditions everywhere. We express these insights in different terms, using mathematics and measurement the Stoics did not possess. But the fundamental vision is remarkably similar. The cosmos is not a collection of separate things, but a web of relations. What affects one part affects the whole. Marcus Aurelius returns to the theme of interconnection throughout his meditations. It is one of his central preoccupations, a truth he reminds himself of repeatedly. He writes in the second book that we are made for cooperation, like hands, like feet, like the rows of upper and lower teeth. To work against one another is therefore contrary to nature. This is not simply moral exhortation. It is a statement about what we are. Human beings are naturally social, naturally interdependent. Our nature is fulfilled not in isolation, but in relation. When we act against the common good, we are acting against ourselves, violating our own nature, cutting ourselves off from the whole we belong to. In the fourth book, Marcus writes that what benefits the hive benefits the bee. A simple statement, almost a proverb, but it contains the full weight of Stoic ethics. Our good is not separate from the common good. We cannot flourish alone. Our well-being is inextricably bound to the well-being of the community and ultimately to the well-being of the cosmos itself. He reminds himself that all rational beings are kin. We are made of the same substance, share the same reason, belong to the same world city. When someone acts wrongly, they are not an enemy to be hated, but a fellow member of the body who has momentarily forgotten their nature. They deserve correction if possible, patience always, and ultimately recognition that they too are part of the whole. This is why Stoic ethics is so different from modern individualistic morality. For us, ethics often begins with the question of individual rights, individual autonomy, individual flourishing. We start with the separate person and ask how they should act toward others. The Stoics started from the opposite direction. They began with the whole, with the recognition of interconnection, and understood the individual as a particular expression of that whole. Ethics was not about protecting individual interests, but about fulfilling one's role within the larger system. This does not mean the individual disappears. Each person has a unique character, unique capabilities, a unique position in the cosmic order. But these individual qualities have meaning only in relation to the whole. To be virtuous is to play your part well, to fulfill your function, to act in accordance with both your specific nature and the universal nature you share with all rational beings. Marcus often uses the metaphor of an actor in a play. You did not choose your role. You may be cast as a king or a beggar, given a long part or a short one, but you are responsible for playing your assigned role well. The length and the grandeur of the part are indifferent. What matters is how you play it. This metaphor captures something essential about the Stoic view of Sympatheia. We are participants in a larger drama, a cosmic unfolding that we did not create and cannot control. But we are not merely passive. We are rational beings, capable of understanding our role and choosing to fulfill it with excellence. The play itself is an expression of logos, the rational principle governing all things. It is not arbitrary or chaotic. There is a pattern, a purpose, a direction to the whole. When we align ourselves with this larger pattern, we experience fulfillment. When we resist it, we experience frustration and suffering. But this alignment is not submission to external force. It is recognition of what we truly are. The logos that governs the cosmos is the same logos that constitutes our own reason. When we think rationally, we are thinking the thoughts that nature thinks through us. When we act virtuously, we are acting as nature intends, fulfilling the purpose for which we exist. This is the deep connection between Stoic physics and Stoic ethics. Because we are parts of a rational whole, our good consists in acting rationally, in harmony with the whole. Virtue is not an arbitrary standard imposed from outside. It is the natural excellence of a being who understands their place in the cosmos and acts accordingly. Sympatheia means that our actions matter not only to ourselves, but to everything. We cannot do wrong without affecting the whole, any more than a hand can strike itself without affecting the body. We cannot do good without contributing to the universal good, any more than a healthy organ can function well without benefiting the entire organism. It is worth asking what difference this understanding makes to actual lived experience. Philosophy can sometimes remain abstract, a set of propositions we acknowledge intellectually without truly feeling their force. But Sympatheia, truly grasped, changes how we perceive the world moment to moment. Consider a simple experience walking through a forest. We usually see trees as separate objects, background scenery to our own thoughts and concerns. But if we understand Sympatheia, we see something different. Each tree is an expression of the same natural principle that expresses itself in us. The process by which a tree grows from seed to sapling to mature form is not fundamentally different from the process by which we grow from infancy to adulthood. Both are logos unfolding in time, nature developing according to its own rational patterns. The air we breathe was produced by those trees. The oxygen entering our lungs came from their leaves. The carbon dioxide we exhale will feed their growth. This is not poetic metaphor. It is literal metabolic interconnection. We are exchanging substance with the forest, participating in cycles that extend far beyond our individual bodies. The soil beneath our feet contains countless organisms, each playing its role in the larger ecosystem. The fungi forming underground networks that connect tree roots over vast distances, sharing nutrients and information. The bacteria breaking down dead matter and making minerals available to living plants. The insects pollinating flowers, the birds spreading seeds, the predators controlling prey populations. None of these things exist independently. Each is what it is by virtue of its relationships. Remove the bees and certain plants cannot reproduce. Remove certain plants and specific animals cannot eat. Remove those animals and their predators must adapt or perish. Everything is connected to everything else in a vast web of mutual dependence. The Stoics did not know the details of ecology as we do, but they understood the principle. They saw the cosmos as a living unity in which every part contributed to the whole and depended on the whole for its existence. What we have discovered through careful observation and measurement is that they were right. This recognition changes how we act. If I am genuinely connected to all things, if my well-being is inseparable from the well-being of the whole, then I cannot be indifferent to what happens beyond my immediate concerns. The health of the ecosystem is my health. The suffering of other conscious beings is my suffering. The fate of future generations is my fate. This is not abstract philosophical idealism. It is sober realism, recognition of how things actually are. We depend on systems larger than ourselves for everything we need. The air we breathe, the water we drink, the food we eat, the climate that makes agriculture possible. These are not external resources we exploit. They are conditions of our existence, dimensions of the larger body we belong to. When we damage these systems, we damage ourselves. Not eventually, not in some distant future, but now. The damage may not be immediately visible to us, but that is a limitation of our perception, not a reflection of reality. The interconnection is always there, whether we notice it or not. The Stoics would say that recognizing Sympatheia is part of wisdom, of seeing clearly what is truly in our interest. The person who thinks they can flourish while the whole deteriorates is like a hand that imagines it can be healthy while the body dies. It is not just morally wrong. It is fundamentally confused about what a hand is. This understanding provides a foundation for ethics that does not rely on sentiment alone. We might feel compassion for other beings, and the Stoics encouraged proper affection for others. But even without special feeling, even on a cold rational calculation, we have reason to care for the whole because we are inseparable from it. Our circle of concern naturally extends outward when we understand Sympatheia, not by forcing ourselves to care, but by recognizing that the boundaries we draw between self and other, between our tribe and others, between humanity and nature, are conventional rather than natural. The actual structure of reality is continuous, not divided. Yet Sympatheia is not an excuse for dissolving all boundaries or abandoning all distinctions. The Stoics were not advocating that we ignore what is close to us in favor of abstract universalism. They understood that we have particular roles, particular relationships, particular responsibilities. Marcus Aurelius was an emperor. He had specific duties to Rome, to the people under his rule, to his family. He could not treat everyone exactly the same way, as if proximity and relationship made no difference. A father has special obligations to his children. A citizen has special obligations to fellow citizens. These are not violations of Sympatheia, but expressions of it. The key is understanding these particular obligations in the context of universal connection. We care for those closest to us not because they are the only ones who matter, but because this is our particular way of serving the whole. We are positioned in a specific place with specific capacities and relationships. Fulfilling our particular role is how we contribute to the larger order. Imagine a body again. The eye has special responsibility for seeing, the ear for hearing, the hand for grasping. This specialization does not contradict the unity of the body. It expresses it. Each organ contributes to the whole precisely by fulfilling its particular function. Similarly, each person has a particular position in the cosmic order. We have specific talents, specific relationships, specific circumstances. Our virtue consists in doing well what we are positioned to do, not in trying to do everything for everyone all the time. But we must hold our particular roles lightly, understanding that they exist within a larger context. When Marcus performed his duties as emperor, he did so remembering that he was a citizen of the world city, that Romans and barbarians shared the same rational nature, that his power was temporary and his fame ultimately unimportant. This prevents the particular from becoming exclusive. We can care especially for our family without thinking that only our family matters. We can serve our nation without nationalism. We can focus our efforts locally without losing sight of the universal. The Stoics called this concept oikeiosis, a term difficult to translate precisely. It means something like appropriation or familiarization, the process by which we extend our sense of kinship outward in concentric circles. We begin with ourselves, then extend to family, then to community, then to humanity, and ultimately to all of nature. This extension is not arbitrary. It is based on recognition of shared nature. We are all expressions of logos, all parts of the cosmic whole. The circles of relationship are not barriers but degrees of closeness within a fundamental unity. The ethical task is to draw the outer circles inward, to feel toward all rational beings something of what we naturally feel toward our own children. Not the same intensity, perhaps, but the same quality of care and recognition. They are kin, members of the same vast family, fellow citizens of the cosmos. This provides the foundation for Stoic cosmopolitanism, the idea that we are citizens of the world. Our primary allegiance is not to any particular city or nation, but to humanity itself and ultimately to the cosmos. Political boundaries are conventional. The natural community is universal. When Epictetus taught that we should think of ourselves as citizens first of our own city, but more fundamentally of the cosmos, he was articulating this principle. Our local citizenship is real and important, but it must be understood as existing within a larger citizenship that transcends all conventional boundaries. This teaching feels especially relevant now, in a time when we face challenges that do not respect national borders. Climate change, pandemic disease, mass migration, economic interconnection. These are cosmic issues, requiring cosmic perspective. The Stoics offer us a way to think about such issues that is neither naive universalism nor narrow tribalism. We can honor our particular loyalties while recognizing our universal obligations. We can act locally while thinking globally. We can play our specific role while serving the whole. In the sections ahead, we will deepen this understanding, exploring how Sympatheia connects to other Stoic teachings and how we might apply it in the specific circumstances of modern life. For now, let this foundation settle. We are parts of one living whole. This is not poetry. This is what we are. We turn now toward a deeper inquiry into the Stoic concept of sympatheia, that cosmic sympathy binding all things into a unified whole. This is not metaphor, nor is it poetry dressed as philosophy. For the Stoics, Sympatheia named something true about the structure of reality itself. The universe, they believed, was one living organism, animated by divine reason, and every part of it participated in the life of the whole. You and I, the earth beneath our feet, the distant stars, all were expressions of a single rational principle that the Stoics called pneuma or logos. To understand Sympatheia is to understand that separation is illusion, that the boundaries we perceive between self and world are conventions of perception rather than divisions in nature. Marcus Aurelius reflected on this constantly. In his private writings, he returns again and again to the idea that he is a part, not a separate thing. All things are interwoven, he writes, and the knot is sacred. This was not sentimentality. It was metaphysics. The world was not a collection of independent objects bumping into one another by chance. It was a coherent system, ordered by intelligence, and every event within it was connected to every other event through invisible threads of causation and mutual influence. What happened to one part affected the whole. The whole expressed itself through each part. There was no such thing as isolated existence. This understanding shaped everything about Stoic thought. Their physics, their theology, their ethics all emerged from this recognition of universal connection. If we are parts of one whole, then our rational nature is a share in the rationality governing the cosmos. If we are woven into the fabric of all things, then our well-being cannot be separated from the well-being of the whole. If the universe is a single living body, then to harm another person is to harm ourselves, just as one part of a body cannot injure another without diminishing the vitality of the entire organism. Sympatheia begins with observation. The Stoics were careful watchers of nature. They noticed that the moon influenced the tides, that seasonal changes in one region affected weather patterns far away, that animals sensed storms before they arrived. They saw that human bodies responded to shifts in temperature and light, that plants turned toward the sun, that seeds knew when to sprout and birds when to migrate. Everything in nature seemed attuned to everything else. Nothing moved in isolation. The world was full of correspondences, influences, and hidden relationships. From these observations, they developed a cosmology. The universe, they argued, was pervaded by pneuma, a kind of intelligent breath or vital force that held all things together and coordinated their movements. Pneuma was not separate from matter but thoroughly mixed with it, giving matter its structure, coherence, and capacity for change. At different levels of intensity, pneuma manifested as inorganic stability in stones, as growth in plants, as sensation in animals, and as reason in human beings. But it was the same pneuma throughout, the same divine rationality expressing itself in different modes. This meant that all things shared a common nature at the deepest level. The logos that ordered the stars was the same logos that ordered your thoughts. The reason that structured the cosmos was the same reason you used to deliberate, to plan, to understand. Human rationality was not an accident or a foreign element imposed on an indifferent universe. It was the cosmos becoming conscious of itself. When you thought clearly, you participated directly in the intelligence of the whole. And because everything shared this common rational nature, everything was connected through sympathy. Sympatheia described the way parts of the whole responded to one another, the way changes in one area rippled outward to affect distant regions, the way the universe maintained its unity despite its apparent multiplicity. It was like a vast web, so finely woven that a touch anywhere sent vibrations through the entire structure. Or like a single body, in which sensation in the foot was immediately registered by the mind, and intention in the mind moved the hand without delay. This was not mysticism. The Stoics considered themselves naturalists, explaining phenomena through physical principles rather than supernatural intervention. But their physics was animated, organic. They did not imagine a mechanical universe of dead matter obeying external laws. They imagined a living cosmos, intelligent and purposeful, within which every event contributed to the rational order of the whole. Sympatheia was the principle that made this order possible, the connective tissue of reality itself. Understanding sympatheia requires us to reconsider what we mean by self and other. In ordinary life, we experience ourselves as distinct individuals, bounded by skin, separate from everything outside us. We navigate the world as subjects encountering objects, making our way through an environment that seems fundamentally external to who we are. This perspective is practical. It helps us function day to day. But the Stoics insisted it was also incomplete, a surface reading that missed the deeper truth of our situation. At the level of physical reality, the boundary between self and world dissolves under examination. You breathe air that was just exhaled by trees and returned by your lungs transformed. You eat food grown in soil, absorbing elements that were once part of other organisms and will soon become part of your cells. Your body is a temporary configuration of matter borrowed from the world and destined to return to it. Nothing about you is permanently yours. You are a pattern of organization, a wave moving through substance that was here before you and will remain after you pass. The same is true mentally and socially. Your thoughts are shaped by language you did not invent, by ideas transmitted through generations, by conversations with others whose perspectives enter your mind and alter your understanding. Your emotions respond to events in the lives of people far away, to news of strangers, to possibilities you have never directly encountered. Your character was formed by influences you cannot fully trace, by parents and teachers, by stories and examples, by cultural currents moving through time. You are not self-created. You are the convergence of countless influences, a meeting point of forces larger than yourself. For the Stoics, recognizing this was not depressing but liberating. If you are not a separate, isolated self trying to protect your interests against a hostile world, then the universe is not your opponent. You are part of something greater. Your life is meaningful not despite your smallness, but because you contribute to the whole. Your rationality connects you to the divine reason ordering all things. Your actions ripple outward through the web of causation, affecting others and being affected in return. You matter because everything matters. The universe is not indifferent to you because you are not separate from it. Marcus Aurelius expressed this with startling directness. He told himself to remember constantly that he was a part, not a part. What is bad for the hive is bad for the bee, he wrote, recognizing that individual well-being could not be secured through opposition to the whole. He imagined the universe as a single city in which all rational beings were fellow citizens, bound by common nature and common law. He saw human society not as an artificial construct imposed on nature, but as an expression of nature itself, the way rational parts of the cosmos naturally organize themselves into cooperative wholes. This vision had immediate ethical consequences. If we are parts of one whole, then cosmopolitanism is not idealism but realism. We genuinely are members of one another. Harming another person is harming the body to which you belong. Indifference to suffering elsewhere is like a hand refusing to help the foot, absurd because ultimately self-defeating. The boundaries we draw between nations, tribes, and families are conventional. The true community is universal, encompassing all rational beings simply because they share the same nature and participate in the same logos. But Sympatheia extends beyond human relations to encompass the entire natural world. Plants and animals also participate in the life of the whole, also play their parts in the cosmic order. The Stoics did not sentimentalize nature. They recognized that life involves conflict, predation, and decay. Yet they insisted that these processes too were part of the rational order, that death fed life, that destruction was necessary for renewal, that apparent antagonism contributed to overall harmony. This perspective does not demand we treat all beings identically. The Stoics distinguished between different levels of moral status based on rational capacity. But it does require recognizing that we exist within a network of relationships, that our flourishing depends on the health of systems beyond ourselves, that the well-being of the whole constrains and shapes the possibilities for individual parts. We are not atoms colliding in a void. We are organs in a living body, and the body's health is our own. Sympatheia thus becomes a lens through which to view all of experience. Every encounter reveals connection. Every event unfolds as part of a larger pattern. Nothing is truly isolated. Nothing is without consequence. The universe is not a collection of separate things but a unified process, and you are woven into it at every level of your being. To grasp the Stoic understanding of Sympatheia more fully, we must consider how they conceived of causation itself. In modern thought, we tend to imagine causes as discrete events pushing against one another like billiard balls, each impact generating a predictable effect. The Stoics thought differently. For them, causation was a continuous web of influence, a densely interwoven network in which every event contributed to every other event, and the whole universe conspired to produce each particular outcome. They distinguished between different kinds of causes, recognizing that some were more direct and some more remote, but they insisted that the complete explanation for anything included the entire state of the cosmos. Why does the seed sprout today? Immediately, because of moisture and warmth in the soil. More distantly, because of seasonal changes driven by the Earth's relationship to the sun. More distantly still, because of the nature of seeds themselves, their capacity for growth and reproduction. Ultimately, because the logos governing all things ordained this moment as part of the rational order of the whole. This way of thinking makes every event cosmic. Nothing is trivial. Nothing is without significance. The movement of your hand as you reach for a cup is connected to the formation of galaxies. Not because galaxies caused your hand to move, but because both your action and the galaxy structure are expressions of the same universal order, manifestations of the same rational principle unfolding across different scales. Epictetus used to tell his students that they should view themselves as actors in a play written by Zeus. You did not choose your role, and you do not control the plot. Your part might be large or small, tragic or comic, noble or humble. What matters is that you play it well, that you embody your character with excellence, that you say your lines with conviction. The script itself is not yours to write. That belongs to the divine playwright who composed the entire drama of existence. This metaphor captured something essential about Sympatheia. The play only makes sense as a whole. Your lines depend on the lines spoken by others. Your scenes require their scenes. Your character exists in relationship to all the other characters. Isolated, your part would be meaningless. Connected, it contributes to a larger story. The meaning of your individual existence emerges from your participation in the universal pattern. Yet this did not make the Stoics fatalistic in the sense of passive or resigned. They distinguished carefully between determinism and fatalism. Everything that happens does indeed happen necessarily, as part of the rational order of the whole. But your actions are part of that necessity. Your choices genuinely contribute to outcomes. You are not an observer watching a predetermined script unfold. You are an agent whose agency is woven into the causal fabric of the universe. Consider a musician in an orchestra. The symphony is composed. The score is written. Each note follows necessarily from what came before, and the whole piece progresses toward its conclusion with inevitability. Yet the musician still chooses how to play. The quality of her performance matters. Her attention, her skill, her understanding of the music all shape what the audience hears. She is simultaneously following the score and creating the sound. Her freedom exists within structure, not despite it. The Stoic sage understands this. She recognizes that her will is part of the cosmic will, that her reason participates in universal reason, that her choices, while genuinely hers, also express the logic of the whole. She does not rebel against circumstances because she understands that circumstances are part of the rational order. But she also does not surrender her agency. She acts deliberately, chooses thoughtfully, exercises judgment, knowing that her actions matter precisely because they contribute to the pattern. This perspective transforms how we relate to events. When something happens that disrupts our plans or challenges our preferences, the instinct is to resist, to wish things were otherwise, to fight against what is. The Stoic trained in Sympatheia responds differently. She asks what role this event plays in the larger order. She looks for the connection between what is happening and the well-being of the whole. She considers how her response might contribute constructively to the unfolding pattern. This does not mean accepting harm passively or abandoning effort. The Stoics were activists, reformers, leaders. Marcus Aurelius governed an empire. Seneca advised emperors. Epictetus taught students how to live with courage and integrity. But they acted from understanding rather than mere preference, from alignment with reason rather than blind desire. They participated in the cosmic order consciously, cooperating with the nature of things rather than opposing it. Sympatheia thus becomes a guide for action as much as a description of reality. When you recognize that you are part of a larger whole, your decisions naturally shift. You consider broader consequences. You attend to relationships. You ask not only what serves your immediate interest, but what contributes to the health of the systems within which you live. Your horizon expands from the personal to the universal. The metaphysical foundations of Sympatheia rest on the Stoic understanding of pneuma, that intelligent breath pervading all reality. To modern ears, this may sound abstract or even mystical, but for the Stoics, pneuma was as physical as bone and stone. It was substance, material force, the active principle that organized passive matter into coherent forms. Without pneuma, there would be no structure, no pattern, no cosmos at all, only undifferentiated chaos. Pneuma held things together. It explained why a rock maintained its shape, why water flowed, why fire rose. It was the cohesive force within objects, the tension that kept them unified despite the flux of matter constantly passing through them. The Stoics observed that everything material was in flux. Your body replaced its cells continuously. Rivers flowed but remained rivers. Flames consumed fuel and yet persisted as flames. What remained constant was not the matter itself but the organizing pattern, and pneuma was the principle of that organization. At different intensities, pneuma manifested different capacities. In stones and metals, pneuma existed as hexis, pure cohesion, the force that held structure together. In plants, pneuma became physis, nature, the principle of growth and reproduction. In animals, pneuma rose to the level of psyche, soul, enabling sensation, desire, and locomotion. In rational beings, human and divine, pneuma achieved its highest expression as nous, intellect, the capacity for understanding, judgment, and deliberate choice. But these were not separate substances. They were intensifications of the same underlying reality, variations in the concentration and configuration of pneuma. This meant that everything from rocks to gods existed on a continuum, all participating in the same material rational order, all expressions of the same cosmic intelligence at different grades of realization. This view had profound implications for Sympatheia. If everything is pervaded by the same pneuma, then everything is literally connected from within. The connection is not external, not a matter of spatial proximity or causal chains linking separate things. It is intrinsic, constitutive. Things are connected because they share substance, because they are all modifications of the same underlying reality, because the pneuma in you is continuous with the pneuma in everything else. The Stoics sometimes compared the cosmos to a living body. Just as your body coordinates its parts through nervous impulses and vital fluids, the cosmos coordinates its parts through pneuma. When your finger touches something hot, the sensation travels instantaneously to your mind, and your mind commands your hand to withdraw without conscious deliberation. The parts communicate through the whole, and the whole responds as a unity. Similarly, events in one part of the cosmos resonate through the pneuma pervading all things, affecting distant parts, maintaining the coherence of the universal organism. This was not metaphor. The Stoics genuinely believed that the universe was alive, conscious, intelligent. Not conscious in the way individual humans are conscious, with localized awareness and personal perspective, but conscious in a more fundamental way, as the rationality ordering all processes and coordinating all events. The cosmos thought itself, so to speak. Its intelligence was not something imposed from outside but immanent within its structure, expressed through natural law and the regular patterns of change. For human beings, this created an interesting situation. We are parts of a rational whole and we possess reason ourselves. Our minds are fragments of cosmic mind, individualized centers of awareness participating in universal awareness. When we think clearly, when we understand something truly, we are not generating private insight disconnected from reality. We are grasping the actual rational structure of things. Our thoughts correspond to the world because both our thoughts and the world arise from the same logos. This is why truth is possible. This is why understanding matters. The universe is not opaque to reason because the universe is itself rational. The laws governing nature are not arbitrary impositions but expressions of intelligence. When you comprehend a natural pattern, you are touching the mind that shaped it. When you align your will with reason, you are participating consciously in the intelligence ordering all things. Marcus Aurelius drew strength from this recognition. In moments of difficulty, when circumstances seemed oppressive or meaningless, he reminded himself that everything unfolding was part of the rational order of a living cosmos. Nothing happened by accident. Nothing was wasted. Every event, no matter how painful or bewildering, served the purposes of the whole. His suffering was not meaningless because nothing in a rational universe could be meaningless. His task was to understand his role and play it well, to contribute consciously to the symphony even when he could not hear the full composition. This required trust, but it was not blind trust. It was trust grounded in understanding, in the recognition that the intelligence governing the cosmos was the same intelligence within himself, raised to infinite scope and perfect expression. To trust the universe was to trust reason itself, extended beyond his limited perspective to encompass everything. The ethical dimension of Sympatheia emerges directly from this metaphysical understanding. If we are genuinely parts of one living whole, then ethics is not a set of rules imposed from outside but a recognition of our natural relationship to the whole and to other parts. To live ethically is to live in harmony with our nature as rational social beings woven into the fabric of the cosmos. To act unethically is to live in conflict with our nature, to deny or resist the connections that constitute our very existence. The Stoics grounded ethics in nature. What is good is what accords with nature. What is bad is what contradicts nature. But nature here meant not mere biology or instinct but rational nature, the logos expressing itself through us and calling us toward virtue. Our natural function as human beings is to live rationally, to exercise our capacity for understanding and judgment, to act in accordance with reason rather than being driven by impulse or mere appearance. But because our nature is social as well as rational, living according to nature means living in community, contributing to the common good, recognizing our responsibilities to others. We are not merely rational but rationally social. Our reason connects us to other rational beings. We cannot flourish as isolated individuals because we are not constituted as isolated individuals. We are members, and members require the body to which they belong. Sympatheia makes this concrete. The recognition that all rational beings share the same nature, participate in the same logos, and form parts of one cosmic community transforms how we view our relationships. Other people are not competitors for scarce resources or obstacles to our private happiness. They are fellow members of the body to which we belong. Their flourishing is part of our flourishing. Their suffering diminishes the whole and therefore diminishes us. Marcus Aurelius expressed this with the image of branches on a tree. If a branch cuts itself off from the tree, it inevitably cuts itself off from the other branches. You cannot disconnect yourself from the whole without disconnecting yourself from all the parts. Conversely, remaining attached to the whole means remaining in relationship with every other part. The health of the tree depends on each branch drawing strength from the whole and contributing to the whole in return. This is not sentiment but structure. The Stoics did not say you should care about others because it feels good or because a god commands it. They said you must care about others because you are ontologically connected to them, because your very nature as a rational being binds you to all other rational beings, because the logos within you is the same logos within them, and to harm them is quite literally to harm the body of which you are a part. This made ethics both universal and particular. Universal because all rational beings deserve consideration simply by virtue of sharing rational nature. The Stoics were among the first philosophers to articulate a genuinely cosmopolitan ethics, one that transcended tribal, ethnic, and national boundaries. A human being in Rome and a human being in Persia were equally members of the cosmic city, equally participants in universal reason, equally deserving of justice and goodwill. Yet ethics remained particular because relationships varied in proximity and obligation. You have special duties to your family, your friends, your community, not because they are worth more as human beings, but because your particular position in the whole involves specific relationships that come with specific responsibilities. The Stoic image was concentric circles. The innermost circle is yourself. The next contains your family. Beyond that, friends, fellow citizens, and finally all of humanity. Virtue involves drawing these circles inward, treating distant circles more like near ones, extending consideration outward. But it also involves recognizing that some obligations are near and urgent while others are distant and general. Sympatheia provided the metaphysical justification for these expanding circles. If everyone is genuinely connected through shared nature and cosmic pneuma, then the boundaries between circles are conventional rather than absolute. The care you naturally feel for family should rationally extend to all members of the human family, and ultimately to all parts of the rational cosmos. The love a parent feels for a child reveals the truth of connection. The task is to recognize that the same connection exists everywhere, even when our feelings have not yet caught up to reality. This had practical consequences for daily life. When someone wrongs you, the instinct is to see them as an enemy, a separate hostile force attacking your interests. Sympatheia suggests a different response. This person is part of the same whole you belong to. They possess the same rational nature, even if they are currently acting in ignorance or error. They are like a diseased part of the body, needing healing rather than punishment, understanding rather than retaliation. Your task is to correct them if possible, to protect yourself if necessary, but never to forget that you are addressing a fellow member of the cosmic community. The Stoic understanding of sympatheia also shaped their approach to adversity and suffering. When something difficult happens, when circumstances turn painful or plans collapse, the initial response is often to feel that the universe has somehow betrayed us, that we have been singled out for punishment, that what is happening should not be happening. This feeling arises from a sense of separation, from imagining ourselves as isolated individuals whose interests are independent of and sometimes opposed to the workings of the larger world. Sympatheia dissolves this sense of separation. If you are part of the whole, then what happens to you is part of what is happening to the whole. Your circumstances are not arbitrary accidents but expressions of the rational order of the cosmos. This does not mean they are good in the sense of pleasant or preferred. It means they fit into a larger pattern. They arise from the nature of things. They serve purposes beyond your immediate comfort. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself constantly that everything happening was natural, that the universe could not have unfolded differently given what came before, that nothing occurred outside the rational order. When he faced military disasters, political betrayals, personal illness, he told himself that these events were part of the play, part of the script written by Zeus, part of his role in the cosmic drama. His task was not to wish them away but to respond virtuously, to embody excellence within circumstances he did not choose. This perspective did not make suffering disappear. The Stoics were not teaching anesthesia. They acknowledged that pain hurts, that loss grieves, that disappointment frustrates. But they distinguished between unavoidable first movements of feeling and the judgments we add to those feelings. Sympatheia helped cultivate the understanding that suffering, while genuinely difficult, was not meaningless. It participated in the life of the whole. It had a place in the pattern, even if that place was obscure to limited human understanding. Consider a cell in your body encountering an infection. From the cell's perspective, if it had one, the situation might seem catastrophic, a violent disruption threatening its existence. But from the perspective of the whole body, the infection triggers immune response, a complex, coordinated reaction that ultimately strengthens the organism and teaches it to recognize future threats. What appears as disaster from one vantage point appears as functional process from another. The cell is not being punished. It is participating in the life of the whole, even though that participation involves difficulty and danger. The Stoics suggested that our relationship to cosmic order might be similar. What seems to us like meaningless suffering might serve purposes we cannot perceive, might contribute to patterns too large for us to grasp, might be necessary for goods we do not yet understand. This was not an excuse for complacency or an argument against alleviating suffering when possible. It was a framework for endurance, a way of maintaining trust in the rationality of the whole even when particular events seemed irrational. Sympatheia also informed how the Stoics understood their emotional responses to others' suffering. When you see someone in pain, compassion arises naturally. The Stoics did not try to suppress this. They recognized it as an expression of sympatheia, a felt sense of connection, an awareness that what afflicts another afflicts the whole of which you are a part. Your distress at their suffering is the body registering injury to one of its members. But they distinguished between compassionate recognition and the kind of emotional turbulence that clouds judgment and prevents effective response. To see someone suffering and to feel moved to help is rational and virtuous. To become so overwhelmed by distress that you cannot think clearly or act effectively is not. The goal was to maintain clarity while remaining connected, to feel the reality of others' pain without losing your capacity to respond wisely. This balance came from understanding that emotional reactions, while natural, are not themselves virtues. Virtue lies in judgment and action, in choosing responses aligned with reason, in maintaining rational perspective while engaging fully with circumstances. Sympatheia made clear that isolation was impossible, that we are always already connected to others, always affected by what happens to them. The ethical task was not to suppress that connection but to express it rationally, to let understanding guide compassion rather than being swept away by reactive feeling. In practical terms, this meant that the Stoic engaged actively with others' welfare, worked to alleviate suffering where possible, contributed to the common good, while simultaneously maintaining emotional equilibrium. She did not stand apart, observing suffering with detachment. She participated, but with wisdom. She cared, but without losing herself. She remained connected to the whole while exercising the rational freedom that was her specific contribution to the whole. As we deepen our exploration of Sympatheia, we begin to see how thoroughly it permeated Stoic thought, informing not just ethics and theology but also their understanding of human psychology, social organization, and the very possibility of knowledge itself. Sympatheia was not one doctrine among others, but the underlying principle that unified their entire philosophical system, the insight that made sense of everything else they taught. Consider the Stoic approach to knowledge. How is it possible that our thoughts correspond to reality? Why should the concepts in our minds match the structures in the world? The answer for the Stoics lay in Sympatheia. Our minds are parts of the cosmic mind. The reason we use to understand the world is the same reason that structures the world. When we grasp a truth, we are not leaping across an impossible gap between subjective thought and objective reality. We are recognizing a pattern that exists both in the world and in ourselves because we and the world share the same rational nature. This made the Stoics confident empiricists. They trusted sense experience because they trusted that the universe was organized rationally and that our faculties were adapted to comprehend it. Skepticism about whether we could know anything at all seemed to them a failure to recognize our participation in cosmic order. Of course, we can know reality. We are part of reality. The logos in us is continuous with the logos in everything else. But this confidence was tempered by humility. While we can know reality, we cannot know it completely. Our perspective is limited. We see parts, not the whole. We grasp fragments of the pattern but rarely comprehend the entire design. The cosmos is rational, but its rationality exceeds our individual capacity to comprehend. This meant that certainty about particular judgments was always provisional, always subject to revision as understanding grew. Sympatheia also explained social organization. Why do humans form communities? Why do we cooperate, communicate, create institutions? Not merely for mutual advantage, though advantage certainly follows, but because cooperation is natural to us, built into our very constitution as rational social beings. We are like organs in a body, like bees in a hive. Individual existence is only possible within a collective context. Our rationality itself is social, developed through interaction, expressed through language, exercised in community. This gave the Stoics a distinctive political philosophy. Government was not an artificial construction imposed on naturally isolated individuals. It was the formalization of relationships already implicit in human nature. The best government was the one that most fully recognized and expressed the rational social nature of human beings, that treated citizens as members of one body rather than as competing interests to be balanced through power. The cosmic city, that great metaphor of Stoic political thought, extended this logic to its conclusion. If all rational beings share the same nature and participate in the same logos, then the true political community is universal. Every human being is your fellow citizen in the cosmic polis. The laws governing this city are not written by human legislators but inscribed in nature itself, the rational principles that order all things. Your duty as a citizen of the cosmos is to live according to these natural laws, to embody virtue, to contribute to the common good of all rational beings everywhere. Marcus Aurelius governed the Roman Empire with this vision in mind. He did not see himself as a powerful individual ruling over subjects. He saw himself as a member of the cosmic community temporarily tasked with administrative responsibilities. His power was a role, a function within the whole, not a personal possession. His obligation was to exercise that function virtuously, to serve the good of the whole rather than his private interest. When he succeeded, he served the cosmic order. When he failed, he disrupted it. His character as emperor expressed either alignment with or deviation from the rational nature of things. This perspective made Stoic ethics deeply egalitarian while remaining practically realistic. All human beings possessed equal fundamental worth because all participated equally in rational nature. A slave and an emperor were equally members of the cosmic city, equally capable of virtue, equally participants in divine reason. External circumstances varied, but inner worth did not. What mattered was how you used your rationality, whether you lived according to nature, whether you fulfilled your function in the whole. Yet external circumstances remained real and consequential. The Stoics distinguished between what was valuable in itself, virtue, and what was merely preferred or dispreferred, the external conditions of life. Health was preferable to sickness, freedom to slavery, wealth to poverty, but none of these externals constituted genuine good or evil. Only virtue was truly good. Only vice was truly bad. Everything else was material for the exercise of virtue, circumstances within which to embody rational excellence or fail to do so. Sympatheia underpinned this entire framework. Because you are part of the whole, your true good must align with the good of the whole. Because you participate in cosmic reason, your flourishing consists in rational activity, in thinking clearly and acting virtuously. Because you are connected to all other rational beings, your obligations extend universally. Because the universe is a coherent rational order, living well means living in harmony with that order, flowing with nature rather than opposing it. We have considered Sympatheia as doctrine, as felt experience, as invitation to see ourselves differently within the cosmos. Now we must deepen our understanding by exploring what it means to live as a conscious thread in this vast weave, aware that every thought, every action, sends ripples through the whole. The Stoics did not speak of cosmic interconnection as poetic metaphor alone. They understood it as literal truth, grounded in their physics, their understanding of pneuma as the active principle binding all things. To grasp Sympatheia fully, we must appreciate how thoroughly this worldview shaped their ethics, their politics, their sense of what it means to be human. When Marcus Aurelius writes that what harms the hive harms the bee, he is not offering pleasant imagery. He is stating what he believes to be physical fact. The individual and the collective are not separate entities with competing interests. They are differentiated aspects of one living system. The health of the part depends upon the health of the whole, and the whole suffers when any part acts against its nature. This perspective challenges much of how we have learned to think about ourselves. We are accustomed to conceiving individual and society as distinct, often opposed. We speak of personal freedom versus collective good, of self-interest balanced against social responsibility, as though these were fundamentally separate considerations requiring compromise. The Stoics saw differently. For them, the apparent tension dissolves when we recognize our true nature. We are not isolated selves who must reluctantly curtail our desires for the sake of others. We are expressions of universal reason, temporarily localized, whose deepest fulfillment comes through alignment with the whole. Consider how this transforms the question of ethics. In most moral frameworks, we must be persuaded to care about others. We start from the assumption that people are naturally self-interested, and ethics consists of rules or reasons that overcome this selfishness. We are taught to be good despite what we truly are. Stoic ethics begins from different ground. If Sympatheia is real, if we are genuinely interconnected at the deepest level, then concern for others is not contrary to our nature but expressive of it. We need not be convinced to care about the whole. We need only recognize that we are not separate from it. This recognition does not come easily. We experience ourselves as bounded, distinct. Your pain is not my pain, at least not in immediate physical sensation. I can be comfortable while you suffer, can thrive while distant others struggle. The boundaries seem obvious, undeniable. Yet the Stoics invite us to look more deeply. The boundaries we experience so vividly, are they ultimate reality or constructed perception? Do they reveal the truth of what we are, or do they reflect the limitations of our awareness? Consider how modern science has revealed interconnections our senses cannot detect. We now know that the atoms composing your body were forged in ancient stars, scattered across space, gathered into this planet, cycled through countless organisms before temporarily cohering as you. The calcium in your bones was once in stone, in shell, in the bodies of creatures long extinct. The water you drink has moved through clouds and rivers, through plants and animals, for billions of years. These are not mere curiosities. They reveal that the boundaries defining where you end and the world begins are far more permeable than they appear. You are not a sealed system but an ongoing exchange, a temporary configuration of elements that will disperse and reconfigure endlessly. The Stoics lacked our scientific instruments, yet they intuited something similar through philosophical reflection. They observed patterns, correspondences, the way disturbances in one domain seemed to echo in others. They noticed how human communities functioned like organisms, how empires rose and fell with rhythms resembling natural cycles, how individual lives reflected larger patterns. From these observations, they constructed their understanding of cosmic sympathy. All things influenced by the same logos, the same rational principle, must be connected at fundamental levels. As parts of one cosmos, one ordered whole, they participate in shared being. Epictetus emphasized this through his metaphor of the festival. Imagine life as a great festival, he suggested. You did not organize it. You did not choose when to arrive or when you must leave. You are a guest, invited for a time, given a role to play. The festival continues before you, will continue after you. Your part matters, but you are not the whole celebration. This image captures something essential about the Stoic view. We are participants, not authors. We emerge from larger processes, play our part, return to the source. During our time, we can act in harmony with the festival spirit or against it. We can recognize our place in the larger celebration or imagine ourselves the sole point of significance. Acting in harmony means understanding that the festival is not primarily for you, nor are you primarily for yourself. You are for the festival, for the whole, finding your fulfillment through appropriate participation rather than through grasping at more than your part. This might sound like subordinating the individual to the collective, a kind of ethical totalitarianism where persons are sacrificed for abstract wholes. But the Stoics would reject this interpretation. They insisted that recognizing our place in the whole does not diminish us. It reveals our true magnitude. You are not less because you are part of something greater. You are more. Your individual existence, far from being opposed to the cosmic whole, is the cosmos knowing itself from one particular perspective. In you, the universe becomes conscious of itself in this specific way, at this specific moment. Marcus Aurelius returns repeatedly to this recognition. When he reminds himself that he is a part of nature, he is not diminishing his importance. He is correcting a misunderstanding about what importance means. The separate self feels important through distinction, through being different from and preferably superior to others. The connected self discovers importance through participation, through being a unique expression of shared being. This shift in perspective transforms how we evaluate our lives. If significance comes from separation, then every similarity to others diminishes us. We must constantly distinguish ourselves, prove our unique worth, guard our accomplishments against the encroachment of others' success. Life becomes competitive at its core, not merely in specific domains but in the very quest for meaning. If significance comes from participation, then similarity does not threaten but confirms our connection to something lasting. We need not be utterly unique to matter. We matter because the cosmos matters, and we are the cosmos in this particular form. Our individual variations add texture and richness, but they are not the source of our worth. Consider how exhausting the first approach becomes. To constantly distinguish yourself, to defend your separate importance against billions of others similarly struggling, requires perpetual effort. You must achieve, acquire, accomplish, and even these victories provide only temporary reassurance before anxiety returns. Have I done enough? Am I falling behind? What if others surpass me? The second approach offers a different possibility. If your significance derives from participation in the whole, then you need not be constantly proving yourself. You need only align with your nature, fulfill your function, contribute what you can from where you are. The question shifts from, how can I make myself important, to, how can I serve the whole of which I am already a part? This is not resignation or passivity. The Stoics were often people of considerable achievement, active in politics, education, public service. But their motivation came from recognizing their role within the larger system rather than from need to prove individual superiority. Seneca describes this beautifully when discussing the wise person's relationship to fortune. Those who understand their connection to the whole, he suggests, are not disturbed by external changes because they recognize these as movements within the system to which they belong. What harms the part may serve the whole. What seems like loss from one perspective may be transformation from another. This does not mean the Stoics were indifferent to particular outcomes. They cared deeply about many things: justice, wisdom, virtue, the welfare of their communities. But they held these concerns within a larger frame of understanding. They recognized that their individual preferences, however passionately felt, were perspectives within a cosmos whose full pattern they could not comprehend. Here we encounter one of the profound challenges Sympatheia presents. If we are truly parts of an interconnected whole, and if that whole is rational and good as the Stoics believed, then everything that occurs must somehow serve the larger pattern. Even suffering, even injustice, even what appears evil must have its place in the cosmic order. This troubled some Stoics as much as it troubles us. How can we maintain that the cosmos is rational and good when we observe so much that seems neither rational nor good? Children suffer through no fault of their own. Cruel people prosper while virtuous ones struggle. Natural disasters destroy indiscriminately. Where is the cosmic rationality in these realities? The Stoics offered several responses, none entirely satisfying, all worth considering. First, they suggested our perspective is limited. We see only fragments of patterns whose full significance requires a view of the whole we cannot achieve. What seems purposeless suffering in isolation may serve functions we cannot perceive. The death that seems only tragedy may make space for new life. The challenge that seems only hardship may develop capacities that benefit the larger community. This response risks justifying evil, making peace with suffering that should provoke action. The Stoics were aware of this danger. They did not counsel passive acceptance of injustice. Marcus Aurelius worked to reform laws, improve governance, protect the vulnerable. Epictetus taught students to oppose wrongdoing. The recognition that all is part of the whole did not mean nothing should be changed. The resolution lies in understanding different levels of response. At the cosmic level, everything that occurs is necessary part of the unfolding pattern. At the human level, within the domain where we have agency, we are responsible for acting according to reason and virtue. These are not contradictory positions but complementary perspectives. We accept that the cosmos operates according to patterns beyond our full comprehension, while simultaneously engaging our reason and will to shape outcomes within our sphere of influence. We acknowledge our place in a system we did not design, while fulfilling our function as rational beings capable of choice and action. This dual perspective becomes clearer through example. Imagine a physician treating illness. The physician accepts that disease is part of nature, that suffering and death are inevitable aspects of existence. This acceptance does not lead to resignation but to engagement. Precisely because illness is natural, the physician's efforts to heal are equally natural. Medicine is nature working through human intelligence to restore balance. Similarly, the Stoic accepts that injustice, suffering, and disorder are part of the world while working to establish justice, alleviate suffering, and create order. This work is not opposition to nature but expression of human nature, which includes rationality and the capacity for moral action. We are the means by which the cosmos addresses its own imbalances. This understanding transforms activism from anxiety to appropriate action. Much modern engagement with social and environmental problems carries desperate quality. We feel we must fix what is broken before catastrophe overwhelms us. The weight of the world's suffering becomes personal burden, leading to burnout and despair. The Stoic engaged differently with what we might call serious playfulness. The work matters deeply, yet the engaged person recognizes their role as participant rather than savior. You do what you can, from where you are, with what you have, because this is your function as rational being within the whole. The outcome belongs to processes larger than your individual effort. This might seem like diminishing the importance of action. In fact, it frees action from the paralysis that comes from overwhelming responsibility. You need not solve everything to do something. You need not guarantee success to make the attempt worth making. You act because action aligns with your nature, regardless of whether you can predict or control all consequences. Marcus Aurelius captures this spirit when he reminds himself to concentrate on the present task, giving it full attention without being distracted by the magnitude of all that needs doing. Each action performed well is complete in itself. The accumulation of such actions shapes the whole, but the value of each is not dependent on the total outcome. Consider how this applies to environmental challenges that feel overwhelming in scope. The changes needed seem beyond what any individual or even any nation can accomplish. The problems are systemic, interconnected, driven by forces larger than personal choice. It would be easy to conclude that individual action is meaningless, that nothing we do matters against such massive momentum. The Stoic perspective offers a different approach. You are part of the system you wish to change. Your actions, however small they seem, are movements within the whole. Every choice aligned with reason contributes to the overall pattern. You cannot control outcomes, but you can fulfill your function as rational being capable of living according to nature. This means acting rightly even when the action seems insufficient to the scale of the problem. You make choices that honor interconnection, reducing waste, supporting regeneration, advocating for systemic change, educating yourself and others. Not because you believe your personal recycling will reverse climate change, but because living according to reason means acknowledging your connection to larger systems and acting accordingly. The significance of the action lies not in its measurable impact on total outcomes, but in its expression of understanding. You act from recognition of sympatheia, from knowing you are part of the whole whose well-being includes but exceeds your individual welfare. The action aligns your individual will with universal reason, regardless of whether you can trace its ultimate effects. This is simultaneously humbling and empowering. Humbling because it acknowledges the limits of individual agency. You cannot control the cosmos or determine all outcomes. Empowering because it frees you from the paralysis of feeling responsible for what you cannot control. Your responsibility is to act according to reason from where you are. The rest unfolds according to patterns larger than personal will. Epictetus emphasized this through his famous distinction between what is up to us and what is not. Our opinions, impulses, desires, aversions, these are up to us. Everything else, our bodies, possessions, reputations, offices, these are not fully up to us. They depend on factors beyond our control, on the movements of the whole in which we participate. Understanding this distinction prevents the anguish that comes from trying to control what cannot be controlled. You focus your attention and effort where you have agency, on your own reasoned responses to circumstances, on the quality of your engagement with what occurs, on aligning your will with nature rather than fighting against reality. Yet this distinction can be misunderstood as encouragement to withdraw from worldly engagement. If external things are not up to us, why involve ourselves with them? Why not retreat into internal cultivation and let the world proceed without our participation? The Stoics rejected this interpretation. We are social beings by nature, they insisted. Our rational capacity includes not only logical thought but also justice, kindness, cooperation, qualities that can only be expressed through engagement with others. To fulfill our nature requires participation in community, in the life of the whole. The distinction between what is and is not up to us does not separate us from the world. It clarifies how to engage with the world wisely. We participate fully, while recognizing that outcomes depend on factors beyond our individual control. We act according to our best understanding of reason and virtue, while accepting that results will reflect the interplay of countless influences. This brings us back to Sympatheia as foundation for ethics. If we are genuinely interconnected, if our individual well-being is inseparable from the well-being of the whole, then ethical action is not sacrifice of self-interest for abstract principles. It is enlightened recognition of what truly serves us. When you act justly toward others, you are not diminishing yourself for their sake. You are expressing your nature as rational being connected to the whole. When you contribute to your community's welfare, you are not altruistically giving up personal benefit. You are serving the system of which you are part, knowing that the system's health is inseparable from your own. This understanding removes the resentment that often accompanies ethical duty. If goodness requires constant sacrifice, constant suppression of what we truly want, then virtue becomes burden. We may force ourselves to act ethically through discipline or fear of consequences, but the action carries quality of self-denial. When we recognize our interconnection, ethics feels different. The action that serves the whole serves us, not because we receive direct reward, but because we are not separate from the whole we serve. The thriving of others is not opposed to our thriving, but part of the same flourishing. Marcus Aurelius reminds himself of this daily. Human beings are made for cooperation, he writes. To act against one another is to act against our own nature. When someone wrongs you, they harm themselves more than they harm you, because they corrupt their own rational capacity. Your response should be pity rather than anger, understanding rather than vengeance. This is not naive optimism about human nature. The Stoics were quite aware of humanity's capacity for cruelty, selfishness, and folly, but they understood these as failures to recognize our true nature, ignorance of the interconnection that binds us. Those who harm others do so from not knowing what they are, not from expressing what they are. This recognition shapes how we respond to wrongdoing. Punishment may be necessary for social order, but its purpose is correction rather than retribution. We restrain those who harm others as we would restrain someone harming themselves through ignorance. The goal is to restore them to reason, to help them recognize their place in the whole, not to inflict suffering as payment for suffering caused. The ethical implications of Sympatheia extend beyond individual interactions to questions of justice, governance, and social organization. If all humans are parts of one whole, expressions of universal reason, then no arbitrary division of persons into superior and inferior can be justified. The Stoic vision was genuinely cosmopolitan, seeing all rational beings as fellow citizens of the cosmos regardless of nationality, social status, or other conventional distinctions. We have spent much time now in the contemplation of Sympatheia, moving through its metaphysical foundations, its expression in Stoic cosmology, its manifestation in the thoughts of Marcus Aurelius and his fellow philosophers. We have considered the great web of causes, the cosmic organism, the pneuma that flows through all things, binding them into one living unity. These are profound ideas, worthy of sustained reflection. Yet the Stoics were never merely theorists. They were practical philosophers, men and women who believed that wisdom must show itself in how one lives, in the choices made each day, in the quality of one's character and conduct. And so we turn now to the question that necessarily follows from all this contemplation. If Sympatheia is real, if we truly are parts of one great whole, connected to all other parts through invisible but genuine bonds of mutual influence and shared nature, then how should this understanding shape the way we live? What difference does it make to know that we participate in a cosmic web of interdependence? How does this metaphysical insight translate into practical guidance for daily life? The answer for the Stoics is that Sympatheia provides the very foundation for ethics. It is not simply an interesting fact about the universe, a curious feature of reality to be noted and then set aside. Rather, it is the basis for understanding what it means to be human, what we owe to one another, and how we ought to conduct ourselves in every moment. The recognition of our interconnection is the source from which virtue flows. Consider first the most basic ethical implication. If we are all parts of one whole, then we share a fundamental kinship. Marcus returns to this point again and again in his meditations, reminding himself that the person who wrongs him, who frustrates him, who seems to stand in his way, is nonetheless his kinsman, a fellow rational being, a part of the same cosmic body. This is not sentimental thinking. It is a direct consequence of Stoic metaphysics. When you wake in the morning, Marcus writes, and feel reluctant to engage with the world, with difficult people and challenging circumstances, remember this. You were made for cooperation with others, made to work together toward common ends. To act against another human being is to act against your own nature, against the very purpose for which you exist. You are like a hand that refuses to help the body, or an eye that declines to see for the sake of the whole organism. This biological metaphor is more than just a helpful image. For the Stoics, it describes literal reality. We are members of one body, the cosmic organism. What affects one part affects all parts. What benefits the whole benefits each member. And this understanding immediately generates ethical obligations. Just as your hand naturally serves your body without needing to be convinced or coerced, so too should you naturally serve the human community, recognizing that in serving the whole, you serve yourself properly understood. The Stoic ethical framework begins, then, with this recognition of shared nature. You are not an isolated individual whose interests stand in opposition to others. You are a node in a vast network of relationships, a part whose proper functioning contributes to the health of the whole. Your well-being and the well-being of the community are not separate concerns that must be balanced. They are fundamentally aligned because you are what you are only in relation to the whole. This has practical implications for how you approach every interaction. When you encounter another person, you are not meeting a separate entity whose needs compete with yours. You are meeting another part of the same organism to which you belong. Their good is your good, properly understood. Their flourishing contributes to the health of the whole, which includes you. Their suffering diminishes the whole, which includes you. This does not mean, the Stoics would emphasize, that you have no boundaries, that you must sacrifice your own well-being for others in some simplistic way. The Stoics were not naive about human nature or social dynamics. But it does mean that you approach others with a fundamental disposition of goodwill, recognizing that your interests are ultimately aligned rather than opposed. This understanding of shared nature provides the basis for one of the most important Stoic concepts, oikeiosis, often translated as appropriation or affiliation. This is the natural process by which we extend our circle of concern outward from ourselves to include others. The Stoics observed that even infants display a kind of self-love, an immediate concern for their own well-being and preservation. This is not selfishness in any moral sense. It is simply natural, part of what it means to be a living creature. But in rational beings, this initial self-concern naturally develops and expands. The child comes to recognize its parents as connected to itself, worthy of care and concern. This circle widens to include siblings, then extended family, then friends, then fellow citizens, and ultimately all of humanity. This expansion is not artificial or forced. It is the natural development of rationality, the growing awareness of our true nature as social beings embedded in a web of relationships. The Stoics sometimes used the image of concentric circles to represent this process. You stand at the center, surrounded by circles of increasingly distant relationships. The task of ethical development is to draw these outer circles inward, to extend to distant others the same natural concern you feel for those closest to you. This is possible because sympatheia is real. Those distant others are not genuinely separate from you. They are parts of the same whole, connected to you through bonds that exist whether you acknowledge them or not. In practical terms, this means cultivating a disposition of universal goodwill. Not a vague sentiment of general niceness, but a substantive recognition that every human being shares your rational nature, participates in the same cosmic order, and deserves to be treated accordingly. This is what the Stoics meant by cosmopolitanism, the understanding that you are a citizen not just of your particular city or nation, but of the cosmos itself. Your primary allegiance is to humanity as a whole, to the universal community of rational beings. This has immediate implications for how you conduct yourself in the world. You cannot justify treating others poorly on the grounds that they are strangers to you or foreigners or members of a different group. The boundaries we draw between us and them, between our tribe and others, between citizens and outsiders, are ultimately artificial from the Stoic perspective. They may have practical uses, they may serve certain functions in organizing social life, but they do not reflect the deepest truth about who we are. At the most fundamental level, we are all participants in one rational order, all members of one cosmic community. Consider how this applies to the ordinary encounters of daily life. Someone cuts you off in traffic, or speaks to you rudely, or fails to fulfill an obligation they had to you. The immediate emotional response is often anger, a sense of being wronged, a desire to retaliate or at least to withdraw goodwill. But sympatheia invites you to respond differently. This person who has frustrated you is a fellow participant in the cosmic web. They are acting from their own understanding, pursuing what seems good to them, even if their judgment is mistaken. They are, in Marcus's language, doing what appears to them appropriate to their nature. This does not mean you approve of their action or pretend it was acceptable. It does not mean you have no right to defend yourself or to insist on proper treatment. But it does mean you recognize that this person is fundamentally like you, a rational being trying to navigate a complex world, subject to the same forces and influences that shape your own life. They are not your enemy. They are your kinsmen, even if they do not know it, even if they act in ways that harm both you and themselves. Marcus practiced this recognition constantly. In his meditations, he reminds himself that the person who wrongs him does so from ignorance, not from malice. They think they are pursuing their good, but they are mistaken about what is truly good. They are like someone with diseased eyes who cannot see colors properly, or someone with a broken sense of taste who finds bitter things sweet. Their judgment is impaired, and this is a misfortune for them, not a reason for you to respond with anger. This perspective transforms how you experience conflict and difficulty. Instead of seeing every frustration as an assault on your dignity or well-being, you begin to see human interaction as a complex field of mutual influence, where everyone is acting from their own understanding, often imperfectly, often causing harm without intention. You are participating in a vast web of causes and effects, where your actions ripple outward to touch others, and their actions ripple back to affect you. No one stands outside this web. No one acts in complete isolation. This understanding cultivates patience and compassion, not in a soft or sentimental way, but as a practical recognition of how things actually are. When you understand that others are acting from limited perspective, from incomplete information, from habits and patterns shaped by forces beyond their control, you respond to them more wisely. You are less likely to take offense, less likely to escalate conflict, more capable of responding in ways that actually improve the situation rather than worsening it. But Sympatheia also imposes responsibilities. If you truly are connected to all other beings, if your actions genuinely ripple outward to affect the whole, then you cannot be indifferent to the impact you have. You cannot justify selfishness or cruelty on the grounds that you are only looking out for yourself. There is no self that exists in isolation. You are always already embedded in relationships, always already influencing and influenced by others. The question is not whether you will have an impact, but what kind of impact you will choose to have. The Stoics spoke of this in terms of virtue, the excellence of character that allows you to fulfill your proper function as a rational being. And virtue, in the Stoic understanding, is fundamentally social. It is expressed in how you relate to others, how you contribute to the common good, how you play your part in the cosmic order. The four cardinal virtues, wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance, are all ways of describing proper relationship with yourself, with others, with the whole of which you are a part. Wisdom is seeing things clearly, understanding your place in the great web, recognizing what is truly valuable and what is not. Justice is giving to each what they are due, treating others according to their nature as fellow rational beings, contributing fairly to the common good. Courage is standing firm in your commitment to virtue even when it is difficult, maintaining right relationship even under pressure. Temperance is keeping your desires and aversions properly ordered, not allowing them to disrupt your participation in the whole. Each of these virtues is practical. They show up in daily decisions, in how you speak to your family, how you conduct your work, how you use your resources, how you respond to challenges and opportunities. Sympatheia is not just a theory. It is a framework for action, a way of understanding what you ought to do in any given situation. Consider the virtue of justice more closely. For the Stoics, justice is not primarily about legal systems or formal rules, though it includes these things. Justice is fundamentally about recognizing and honoring the relationships in which you stand. You are connected to other people through bonds of mutual dependence and shared nature. Justice is acting in accordance with these bonds, fulfilling your responsibilities, contributing your part to the common life. This means that injustice is not just breaking rules. It is violating the fundamental order of things, acting as if you were separate and independent when you are actually interconnected and interdependent. When you cheat someone in a transaction, you are not just breaking a social convention. You are acting against the cosmic order, treating a fellow part of the whole as if they were merely a means to your separate ends. You are denying the reality of sympatheia, pretending that your good can be achieved at the expense of others when in fact your good is bound up with theirs. The same applies to all forms of harm. When you lie, you introduce discord into the web of relationships. When you act with cruelty, you damage the body of which you are a part. When you pursue your narrow self-interest at the expense of the common good, you are like a cell that turns cancerous, growing without regard for the organism, ultimately destroying the very system that sustains it. But the practical implications of sympatheia extend beyond how you treat other people. If all things are connected, if the cosmos is one living whole, then your relationship with nature itself takes on ethical significance. The Stoics did not draw a sharp line between human community and the natural world. Both are expressions of the same underlying order, both participants in the same web of causes and effects. This is where the Stoic understanding resonates powerfully with contemporary concerns about ecology and environmental ethics. The Stoics would have had no difficulty understanding that damage to the natural world is damage to the system of which we are part, that treating nature as mere resource to be exploited without regard for consequences is a form of irrationality, a failure to recognize how things actually are. When you walk through a forest, you are not walking through a collection of separate objects that happen to be in proximity. You are moving through a living system, a web of relationships where each element depends on and influences countless others. The trees are not independent units. They are connected through underground networks of roots and fungal systems that allow them to share nutrients and information. The soil beneath your feet is alive with microorganisms whose activity makes plant life possible. The air you breathe is produced by the trees, and the carbon dioxide you exhale feeds them in turn. You are participating in cycles of exchange that existed long before you and will continue long after you are gone. This is sympatheia made visible. You can see it, feel it, sense the reality of interconnection in the natural world. And the Stoics would say that this visible interconnection in nature reflects the deeper cosmic interconnection that binds all things. The pneuma that flows through you flows through the trees as well, through the soil, through the insects and birds and fungi. All of it is one great breathing, one circulation of life and energy through countless forms. This understanding calls for a certain reverence, not in any mystical sense, but simply as appropriate recognition of what is. The natural world is not your possession. It is the larger body of which you are a small part. Your well-being depends on its health. Your life is possible only because of the intricate systems that maintain the conditions for life. To damage these systems carelessly is to act against your own interest, properly understood. It is to saw off the branch on which you sit. In practical terms, this might mean paying attention to how your choices affect the larger systems of which you are part. What you consume, how you use resources, the waste you generate, these are not private matters with no broader significance. They are ways you participate in and influence the great web. You cannot opt out of having an impact. You can only choose to have your impact mindfully, with awareness of the connections that bind your life to all other lives. The Stoics were not environmentalists in the modern sense. They lived in a time when human impact on the natural world was relatively limited, when the idea that humanity could fundamentally alter the planetary system seemed impossible. But their philosophical framework provides resources for thinking about these contemporary challenges. If sympatheia is real, if we are genuinely interconnected with all of nature, then we have obligations that extend beyond the human community to the living world as a whole. This does not mean treating all living things as having equal moral status. The Stoics maintained that rational beings have a special dignity, a capacity for virtue that sets them apart. But it does mean recognizing that we exist in relationship with the non-human world, that our flourishing is bound up with the health of the larger systems, that carelessness and exploitation ultimately harm us as well as the world we damage. Consider something as simple as the food you eat. The Stoics would invite you to be mindful of where it comes from, how it was produced, what relationships and processes made it possible for you to have this meal. Not to burden yourself with guilt or anxiety, but simply to recognize that you are always receiving from the world, always dependent on systems beyond yourself. This recognition naturally generates a disposition of gratitude and responsibility. The practical wisdom that flows from Sympatheia is ultimately about attention, about learning to see the connections that are always already present but often invisible to us. We move through life as if we were separate, as if our actions affected only ourselves, as if we could pursue our interests without concern for the larger whole. But this is a kind of blindness, a failure to perceive what is actually there. The practice, then, is to cultivate awareness of interconnection. To notice, in the midst of daily activity, that you are never alone, never isolated, always participating in webs of mutual influence and dependence. This person you are speaking with is connected to you. Their well-being matters to the whole of which you are both part. This task you are performing affects others, ripples outward in ways you may never fully see. This choice you make about what to buy or use or discard participates in larger systems of production and exchange. None of this requires dramatic changes or heroic efforts. It simply requires paying attention, remembering what is true, allowing your actions to flow from clearer understanding rather than from the habitual assumption of separation. When you speak, remember that your words will affect the person who hears them, and through them will continue to ripple outward. When you make decisions, consider not just the immediate outcome for yourself but the wider impact on the systems in which you participate. This is not burdensome when understood properly. You are not being asked to fix everything, to solve all problems, to sacrifice yourself for some abstract ideal. You are simply being invited to act in accordance with what is real. You are connected. Your actions matter. You are part of something larger than yourself. Living with awareness of these truths is not a duty imposed from outside. It is simply sanity, clarity, seeing things as they are. Marcus Aurelius, writing in his tent during military campaigns, constantly reminded himself of this. He was an emperor, a man with enormous power and responsibility, but he understood that he was still just one part of the whole, one node in the vast web. His actions affected millions, but he was not separate from those he governed. Their good was his good. Their suffering was a wound to the body of which he was a member. And so he tried, however imperfectly, to act with this awareness. He tried to be patient with difficult people, remembering they were his kinsmen. He tried to make decisions that served the common good, not just his personal preference or factional interest. He tried to maintain his virtue, his excellence of character, knowing that this was his proper contribution to the whole. He did not always succeed. He was human, subject to the same limitations and pressures as anyone. But he kept returning to this practice of remembering connection, of seeing himself as part rather than as separate. This is available to you as well, not because you are an emperor or a philosopher, but simply because you are human, a rational being capable of recognizing the truth about your nature. You are embedded in relationships. You participate in the cosmic web. Your life is interwoven with countless other lives, human and otherwise. This is not poetry or metaphor. It is the simple fact of existence, acknowledged clearly by Stoic metaphysics, confirmed by modern science, available to your direct experience if you learn to pay attention. The practical wisdom of Sympatheia is learning to live from this understanding. Not perfectly, not without difficulty or failure, but with growing clarity about what you are and where you stand. You are a part of the whole, and the whole lives in you. Your choices matter because they ripple outward through the web. Your character matters because it affects not just yourself but all those connected to you. Your awareness matters because it allows you to participate consciously in the great circulation of life rather than stumbling blindly through relationships you do not understand. This is how metaphysics becomes ethics. This is how the abstract understanding of cosmic interconnection translates into practical guidance for living. You see the connections. You acknowledge your place. You act accordingly. And in doing so, you fulfill your nature as a rational part of the rational whole, contributing your thread to the vast tapestry, playing your note in the endless symphony of existence. We have traveled together through a landscape of thought that might, at first, have seemed abstract. Sympatheia, cosmic interconnection, the notion that all things participate in one living whole. Yet as we've walked these paths, something quieter has emerged. This is not merely a theory about the universe. It is a way of seeing your own life, your relationships, your place in the world. The Stoics did not separate metaphysics from ethics. They did not imagine that understanding the cosmos was one thing and living well was another. For them, to see clearly how the world is arranged was to understand simultaneously how you ought to move within it. Sympatheia is not just a fact about reality. It is an invitation to live differently. Consider what shifts when you hold this understanding close. When you encounter another person, you do not meet a stranger whose interests oppose yours. You meet another organ in the same body, another thread in the same fabric. Their flourishing and yours are not separate concerns. The health of the whole depends on both. This does not mean you must always agree. Organs have different functions. Threads run in different directions. But it does mean that the antagonism you might feel toward another person is, in some sense, a misunderstanding. A hand does not compete with a foot. They collaborate, often without knowing it, to move the body forward. Marcus Aurelius returned to this thought again and again. He reminded himself that those who obstruct him are not enemies but participants in the same system. Even those who act wrongly, who seem to damage the whole, are still part of it. They are like a branch that has grown crooked, or a limb that has lost its strength. They remain part of the tree. This recognition does not require you to accept harm passively. The Stoics were not quietists. They acted, they governed, they resisted injustice, but they did so without hatred. They understood that even the person who harms you is, in a deeper sense, connected to you. To hate them is to hate a part of the whole to which you also belong. There is a remarkable freedom in this. Hatred is heavy. It drains you. It narrows your vision until all you can see is the injury, the insult, the offense. But when you understand that the other person is part of the same living system, the hatred loses its grip. You can still act. You can still protect yourself or others. But you do so with clarity, not rage. Sympatheia also changes how you understand your own suffering. Pain, loss, frustration, these are not interruptions to the natural order. They are part of it. The universe does not exempt you from difficulty any more than it exempts the tree from the storm or the river from the drought. You are woven into the same conditions that shape all things. This is not fatalism. It is realism, and it is, oddly, a source of peace. When you stop expecting the universe to treat you differently than it treats everything else, You stop feeling singled out by misfortune. You are not being punished. You are simply participating in the movement of the whole. The Stoics called this acceptance amor fati, love of fate, not a passive resignation, but an active embrace of what is. To love your fate is to recognize that your life, with all its difficulties, is your particular way of being part of the cosmos. It is the shape your thread takes in the weaving. This does not mean you do nothing. You still act. You still strive. But you do so with the understanding that your striving is itself part of the pattern. You are not fighting against the universe. You are expressing one of its possibilities. There is an old image that might help here. Imagine a great river, broad and deep, flowing toward the sea. You are in the river. You have always been in the river. You cannot step out of it. The question is not whether you will move with the current. You will. The question is whether you will move willingly or reluctantly. If you swim against the current, you exhaust yourself. You make no progress. You suffer. If you simply go limp and let the current take you, you may avoid effort, but you also surrender any sense of direction or purpose. But if you swim with the current, adding your own strength to the river's movement, something else happens. You participate. You become part of the river's power. You are carried, but you are also active. You are shaped by the flow, but you also shape it in your small way. This is what it means to live in accordance with nature, as the Stoics advised. It is not passivity. It is intelligent participation. You recognize the current. You feel its direction, and you align yourself with it, contributing what you can. What does this look like in daily life? It looks like responding to circumstances rather than resisting them. It looks like accepting that some things are outside your control and focusing your energy on what remains within it. It looks like understanding that your well-being is tied to the well-being of others and acting accordingly. In your work, Sympatheia means recognizing that your labor is not isolated. What you create, what you build, what you offer, it enters a vast network of exchange and influence. The quality of your work affects others, often in ways you will never see. A teacher shapes a student who shapes another student. A craftsman builds something that serves a family for generations. A kind word steadies someone who goes on to steady another. You are not a separate point producing isolated effects. You are a node in a web. What flows through you flows onward. This is both a responsibility and a comfort. A responsibility because it means your actions matter, even the small ones. A comfort because it means you are never truly alone in your efforts. You are always contributing to something larger. In your relationships, Sympatheia means recognizing that the people around you are not obstacles to your happiness or instruments for your use. They are fellow participants in the same living whole. Their flourishing is part of the conditions for your own flourishing. When you harm another, you harm the system that sustains you. When you help another, you strengthen it. This is why the Stoics spoke so much about justice and kindness. These were not arbitrary moral rules imposed from outside. They were expressions of the truth of interconnection. To act justly is to honor the fact that we are all parts of one whole. To act with kindness is to care for the health of the system to which you belong. And in your inner life, Sympatheia offers a kind of perspective that is difficult to find otherwise. When you understand yourself as a part of the cosmos, your personal concerns do not disappear, but they are held in a larger context. You still experience joy and sorrow, success and failure. But these are not the whole story. They are events within a much vaster process. This does not diminish your life. It dignifies it. You are not a meaningless accident. You are an expression of the cosmos itself, a particular way the universe becomes conscious and active. Your thoughts are the universe thinking. Your actions are the universe acting. You are not separate from the whole. You are one of the ways it manifests. The Stoics believed that the universe is rational. They saw in its patterns, its regularities, its intricate interdependencies, the workings of a logos, a rational principle that organizes and animates all things. To live in accordance with nature was to align yourself with this rationality, to participate consciously in the intelligence of the whole. You do not have to adopt this metaphysical picture wholesale to find value in Sympatheia. You do not have to believe in a divine logos or a conscious cosmos to recognize that everything is interconnected. Modern science confirms what the Stoics intuited, that matter and energy are conserved and transformed, that ecosystems depend on intricate webs of relationship, that no organism exists in isolation. Even if you see the universe as fundamentally indifferent, the fact of interconnection remains. What you do affects others. What others do affects you. The systems that sustain your life, ecological, social, economic, are vast and interdependent. You are embedded in them, shaped by them, contributing to them. To live with awareness of this interconnection is to live more wisely. It is to recognize that your interests and the interests of the whole are not opposed. When you damage the environment, you damage the systems that sustain you. When you cultivate contempt for other people, you poison the social fabric you depend on. When you act only for short-term personal gain, you undermine the long-term conditions for anyone's flourishing, including your own. Sympatheia invites you to take a longer view. Not just a longer view in time, though that is part of it. A longer view in scope. To see beyond your immediate circle, your immediate concerns, your immediate moment. To consider the ripples that spread from your actions. To ask not just, what do I want right now? But what serves the health of the whole? This is not self-sacrifice. It is intelligent self-interest. Because you are part of the whole, what serves the whole serves you. Not always immediately, not always in the way you expect. But over time, in the larger pattern, your well-being and the well-being of the systems you belong to are inseparable. Consider the example of a forest. Each tree competes for light, water, nutrients. Yet the forest as a whole is healthier when the trees are diverse, when the soil is rich with decaying matter, when fungi connect root systems and share resources. A single tree trying to dominate at the expense of all others would, in the end, impoverish the soil and weaken the forest, undermining its own long-term survival. Human systems are not so different. We compete, yes. We have individual needs and desires. But we thrive when the systems we belong to are healthy, when there is cooperation as well as competition, when resources are used sustainably, when the fabric of trust and mutual support remains strong. The Stoics recognized this. They did not withdraw from the world. They engaged with it. They held public office. They taught. They wrote. They participated in the life of their communities. But they did so with the understanding that their individual good was not separate from the common good. To serve the whole was to serve themselves, rightly understood. This is the ethical dimension of Sympatheia. It is not an abstract metaphysical doctrine. It is a practical guide to living well. Tells you that you are not isolated. Tells you that your actions matter. It tells you that the quality of your character affects not only your own life but the lives of others, in ways both visible and invisible. And it tells you something else, something quieter but no less important. Tells you that you are never truly alone. Even in your most private moments, even in your struggles that no one else sees, you are part of the vast movement of the cosmos. You are held within it. You are an expression of it. This can be a comfort when you are suffering. You are not outside the natural order, punished or abandoned. You are within it, experiencing one of its many forms. The pain you feel is real, but it is not evidence of your separation from the whole. It is evidence of your participation in it. All things that live suffer. All things that change experience loss. You are not exempt, but neither are you singled out. As we move toward the close of this reflection, it might be helpful to consider how you carry this understanding forward. Sympatheia is not something you learn once and then possess. It is a way of seeing that requires cultivation. The habits of separation are strong. The illusion of independence reasserts itself constantly. You will forget. You will slip back into the feeling that you are a solitary self, navigating a world of separate objects and separate people. This is natural. The mind defaults to division. It draws boundaries. It sorts things into self and other, friend and enemy, mine and not mine. This is useful in its way. It helps you navigate immediate situations. But it is not the whole truth. And when you live as if it were, you cut yourself off from a deeper understanding. So the practice is one of remembering. Again and again, you recall that you are part of a larger whole. You notice the ways you are connected. You see the threads that link you to others, to the natural world, to the systems that sustain your life. You soften the boundaries just a little. You let yourself feel the truth of interdependence. This does not require grand gestures. It can be as simple as pausing before you speak harshly to someone and remembering that they, too, are struggling, that they, too, are part of the same fabric. It can be as simple as noticing the food you eat and considering the long chain of effort and resources that brought it to you. It can be as simple as looking at the night sky and feeling your small place within the vastness. These moments of recognition accumulate. Over time, they change how you move through the world. You become a little less quick to anger, a little more generous in your judgments, a little more aware of the impact you have, not because you are trying to be good, but because you see more clearly how things are. The Stoics believed that virtue is a kind of knowledge. To see the world rightly is to act rightly. When you understand that you are part of an interconnected whole, certain actions become unthinkable. You cannot knowingly harm the system you depend on. You cannot treat others as mere objects when you recognize them as fellow participants in the same living cosmos. This is not moralism. It is coherence. It is aligning your actions with your understanding. And the more deeply you understand Sympatheia, the more naturally this alignment occurs. There will still be difficulty. Understanding interconnection does not exempt you from loss, from frustration, from the friction of living among other people with different needs and desires. But it changes the quality of that difficulty. It becomes something you move through with more grace, more patience, more acceptance. You stop fighting the river. You stop resisting the fact that you are part of a world that includes suffering, change, and impermanence. Instead, you find your place within it. You contribute what you can. You care for what is near you. You act with integrity. And you trust that your small part, however humble, matters to the whole. Marcus Aurelius, near the end of his meditations, wrote something to this effect, that even if you are about to die, you can still act rightly in this moment. You can still be kind, still be just, still be truthful. The shortness of your life does not diminish the value of these actions. They are still expressions of the rational principle that animates the cosmos. They still contribute to the health of the whole. This is the final gift of Sympatheia. It gives your life meaning not because you will be remembered, not because you will achieve great things, but because you are participating in something vast and enduring. The cosmos continues, the web holds, and you, for this brief time, are one of its threads. When your thread is cut, as it will be, the weaving continues. Others will take up the work. The pattern will shift and evolve, but the whole remains, and you will have been part of it. You will have contributed your particular color, your particular texture, your particular path through the fabric. This is not a small thing. In a culture that often measures worth by fame or wealth or lasting legacy, Sympatheia offers a different measure. It suggests that your worth lies in your participation, in the quality of your presence, in the way you treat the people and world around you. These are not grand or dramatic. They are quiet, but they are real. You are part of the whole. This has been true from the beginning. It will be true until the end. The question is whether you will live with awareness of it, whether you will let this understanding shape how you see yourself and others, whether you will move through the world as though everything is connected, because it is. There is a kind of peace in this, not the peace of having no problems, no conflicts, no struggles, but the peace of knowing your place, of understanding that you are held within a larger order, that your life, however difficult or ordinary it may seem, has a kind of rightness to it. You are where you are supposed to be, doing what you are able to do, part of the great movement of things. The Stoics did not promise happiness in the sense of constant pleasure or the absence of pain. They promised something different, a life lived in accordance with nature, a life of integrity and purpose, a life that contributes to the whole. They believed this was the highest form of human flourishing, not because it feels good every moment, but because it is true to what we are. And what we are, they said, is rational beings capable of understanding our place in the cosmos and acting accordingly. We are not separate. We are not isolated. We are parts of one living whole, connected to everything, participating in the vast sympatheia that binds all things together. As you return to your daily life, you carry this with you, not as a burden, but as a quiet knowing. You are part of the web. Your actions ripple outward. Your choices matter. And you are never, not for one moment, alone. The sun rises. The seasons turn. Rivers flow to the sea. And you, in your own small way, participate in all of it. You are the cosmos becoming aware of itself. You are one of the ways the universe knows and acts and cares. This is enough. This has always been enough. The Stoics invite you to live with this awareness, to see clearly, to act justly, to move with the current, to contribute your part to the whole, knowing that the whole is vast and beautiful and indifferent to your praise, but not indifferent to the quality of your participation. Sympatheia is not just a teaching. It is a way of being. It is available to you now and now and now. In every encounter, in every choice, in every breath, you are woven into the fabric of existence. The thread of your life runs through the pattern. And when it is complete, when your particular path has been traced, the weaving will hold it. Your part will remain not as a separate thing, but as an integral aspect of the whole. This is the Stoic vision. This is the understanding that shaped how they lived and how they faced their deaths. They saw themselves clearly, finite, fragile, and utterly connected to everything. And they found in that vision not despair, but dignity. Not isolation, but belonging. May you find the same. May you see the threads that connect you. May you live with the awareness that you are part of something much larger than yourself, and that this is not a diminishment but an enlargement. May you move through your days with the quiet knowledge that you belong to the world, and the world, in its way, belongs to you. The reflection ends here, but the understanding continues. It is woven into the fabric of your life now, if you let it be, and that is enough.